In case you missed our last episode of Life with the Polites, MRL, Marriage, Relationships, and Love, here's what you missed.
Marriage isn't for the weak. Marriage isn't for the weak. Anyone who has grown mentally, physically, or spiritually knows that maturity is not found in comfort. Our growth, is often uncomfortable, messy, and full of feelings that many of us aren't expected but are necessary. A commitment to marriage isn't for the weak or the lazy. It's work, and it should be. Some people don't acknowledge the meaning of putting in what's required. A lot of people really don't understand when that commitment comes upon them that it's what's required. A false aspect of marriage for some people is that they think that marriage basically runs themselves. Whereas many people that find themselves in this position undervalue. They fail to appreciate their relationships, but they get married anyway. You know, we've done a numerous series talking about those that are not ready for marriage but pursue marriage. And this falls in the same realm. We go a step further. We have many people who compare their marriages. They compare their marriages from the outside. Not many people realize that some people hide things better than others. Marriage isn't about a competition. Marriage isn't about what someone has or what someone doesn't have. Marriage is about growing and helping and inspiring. Some would say when one person is motivated, it's hard for them to be with someone who is unmotivated. Part of the build-up, and one of the reasons that I believe that marriage isn't for the weak or the lazy, is that marriage is about persevering, meaning to persist, to stick it out in any undertaking, having and bestowing kindness, having and bestowing love and gentleness in spite of the difficulties, the obstacles, or the disagreements. So here's one of the questions for our audience this morning. Why do we have people who allow themselves to pursue committed relationships when they are comfortable remaining in this state in which we're talking about, a state of weakness, a state of laziness? And when I talk about this state, I'm talking about the lack of determination. And when we find the lack of determination in many sites, we find that many people become judgmental. They're constantly delaying on things, and they're only enthusiastic about themselves. There are many things that marriage isn't, but marriage isn't for the impatient. We all have to understand that there is a ceiling that no one reaches in our relationships. There is no perfection, there's just progress. Marriage is not for the self-sustaining. It doesn't thrive on its own. If all of us just focus, or individually, if we focus on ourselves, we're going to make a mistake. It's never about us. If we come to a part when we talk about self-sustaining and our focus is always on ourselves, we are making a mistake if we are pursuing a type of relationship, a committed relationship. Marriage is something else. Marriage takes effort. Marriage takes energy. Marriage takes determination. Marriage takes labor. Marriage takes on overcoming obstacles. Marriage takes on facing challenges, fighting to be together, holding on and never let go. When we think about the gem of marriage, marriage requires 100% of ourselves. Not 50-50, 100% of ourselves. We have to give all that we're capable of giving to our partners. We have to love, understand. We have to give forgiveness, acceptance, and expect all these things in return. A commitment to a marriage is not for those who believe that a marriage is a myth of a beautiful box full of things that they've longed for, things like companionship, things like intimacy, things like friendship. The truth is that marriage at the start is an empty box that both must put something in before they can take anything out. For instance, there's no love in marriage. The people, love is in the people, and the people put the love in the marriage. There's no romance in marriage. The couple have to pour and fill the marriage with it. A lot of couples must learn the art and form the habits of giving, form the habits of loving, form the habits of serving and praising and keeping the marriage box full. In other words, you can't take out more than what you put in, because when you do that, the box then becomes empty. Those who are weak, those who are lazy, with the mindset of only maintaining their own comfort, and I put another group in that, those that aren't ready for marriage but still do, those are the ones that are willing on taking out before they're putting anything in. I think a lot of us will truly understand and accept the fact that many people get married for the wrong reasons, especially fear of not wanting to be alone. But ponder this, for those who do. People who seek security of not wanting to be alone, that security becomes a comfort, and that comfort makes them become lazy. Something to consider, because you have many people find themselves all caught up in a good thing, caught up in pouring into people, and then they discover it's not enough on the other side. Whatever they do, it's not enough on the other side. And sadly, they discover that all they're giving to that someone, that they don't truly understand what they signed up for. Marriage isn't for the weak. And that can be the problem for many people who find themselves later on in a relationship that the other person isn't ready for. We've constantly talked about the real work that goes into a relationship. And when the real work of building a true marriage, a true relationship begins, idleness, which means the lack of interest, or self-centeredness, or the insecure, are not the characteristics that develop and sustain a relationship. Those aren't building blocks. They're not cornerstones of manifesting a relationship. A marriage is not a noun. A marriage is a verb. It means action in motion. Marriage is not a noun. It's a verb. It's action in motion. Marriage isn't something you get. Marriage is something you do. Weakness is not a reason. Weakness is just an excuse. And there's only two options in a relationship like that. You either make progress or you make excuses. That's why the struggle for so many is hard. That's why the struggle for so many, it's a conflict. Because a lot of people find themselves signed up for something they truly didn't embrace, understand, or really thought through what the contents would all be about. Being married is an active process. Being married is an active process where we daily make our lives about each other, not about ourselves. There's a quote that says, humility is not about thinking less of yourself, but rather thinking of yourself less. Many people need to discover and practice resolve. Resolve. When I speak of resolve, I'm talking about many people need to discover and practice to find the answer or the solution to the problem, and to have more humility in their marriages. It's a very, very hard topic, just like relationships. Relationships are hard. Relationships are hard enough if God's not a part of the relationship. But to take it one step further, when no one in the relationship knows God, it's even harder. Many people don't realize how important God is and remains at the center of commitment, at the center of a committed relationship. I said earlier that growth is often uncomfortable, messy, and full of feelings. And that's part of the growth. We don't expect that, but it's necessary. And we find that at the bottom of the box as we're pouring stuff into it. Let me say it this way, and this is bouncing off of what I said about humility and togetherness. When we love someone, we make mistakes together. When we take steps backwards together, and we recover together. It's painful, but it's necessary. And as we go along this path, it's part of the journey. It's a part of what we embrace. It's a part of what we have to either become devoted to or help to mend. Lady P, our conference line is open at 8.
It's open. If anyone wants to just come on, the line is open. The number is 1-855-565-4143. And so you can come in and I'll be able to see you and unmute if anyone has any questions or any concerns that they would like to address or add during this podcast. Amen.
Amen. But we find this a very challenging because of a couple of things. Of one's devotion, one's commitment, one's true aspiration to really do some of the labor. Because without that type of commitment toward the labor, then we come into what we talk about, the laziness. We talk about being weak, not being in a steadfast meaning of one's own self-centeredness. And we look at that through the triangle of all that's needed as a relationship moves along. A relationship has to move along and things have to be brought together for it to weed out some of the struggles. And a lot of the confrontation that the weakness or the laziness comes, I believe that there is a struggle of self-centeredness that comes in. There is a struggle of being comfort in a way in which there is no communication that opens the door for it to develop and grow to another level. What did you share? What do you think about some of the things that you feel that may cause this particular issue or problem?
Well, I pretty much agree with everything you said, about the box and putting things in it. And I think that's what makes the marriage, because everybody's marriage is different. But the fruits that should be there for marriage has to be there. But again, there are some things that are different because there are some things that you and I do, others, may not do. But the bottom line is that it's putting in what makes that marriage work, and applying God into the marriage. And so what I mean by that is, so for instance, Like some of the things that I do or don't do, or some of the things that you do or don't do, don't mean that other marriages do this. You know what I'm saying? Do and don't do as well. And so, you know, from one marriage it may be the woman cooking and not the man. Another marriage may be the man cooking and not the woman. So it's stuff like that that I'm referring to. But the foundation of it all is rooted in God and in love. And so when you have those two, and then you complement, you add to what makes your marriage work. That's the beauty of it all, because we all have different makeup. That's the way I say it. You know, you have introverts, you have extroverts, as they would say, and all of that. But it's really being kind, being loving to one another, communicating even when, you know, things are tough. You know, just being truthful and honest. And again, those all come from the Word of God. You know, getting an understanding of your partner, gaining knowledge of your partner. You know, knowing what ticks your partner, what doesn't tick your partner, and knowing when to speak, how to speak. You know, all those things apply to a marriage. And so it's really, like you said, it's a learning process. So if you come in thinking that it's all about you and that you're the one to be catered to, and you're the one to reap the benefits, and you're the one that has to be, it's your way or the highway, then it's not a marriage. I think one of the hardest things in a marriage, or one of the things that's painful for me to see, is when people are in a marriage and one person's being deprived of their wants and their needs, is being deprived of growing, or being deprived to the extent that they get lost in the marriage, and that's painful. You know, sometimes people think that others can't see it, and when you do, what do you do? You know, especially if you see this a friend or a relative. You know, what do you do? And so you just pray about it. You be the best of friend to those who may be in those situations, and try to encourage them to be who God has called you to be. No one should be in a relationship where they should be afraid to be who they're called to be, you know, or to grow according to who they know God has called them to grow. I think one of the most painful things for me when I see with marriages is that when you see that there's no fruitfulness, you know, there's no multiplying in the relationship for whatever reason. To me, that's painful. To see that, for me, that's painful, because in the very beginning, when God created Adam and Eve, He told them to have dominion, to multiply, to be fruitful. And so sometimes we just get in these marriages that everything else is there, but what about what God said that should be there as well? And that's where it has to be an examination, you know, of whether there's selfishness on one person's behalf, and they're just not understanding that they're overpowering their needs and their wants over the other party that they're with. So it's communication, and we can't be afraid. You know, that's why you say it's not for the weak. We can't be afraid to speak and to address how you feel, and can't be afraid to take that leap of faith, to stop things or to nip things at certain points in times within the relationship. So it all has to do with that box, you know. Like you said, marriage is what you put in the box, and it should be that you're putting more in than you're taking out on both parties. So with that, if anyone wants to call in and add to this topic, feel free to do so. I'm gonna pass it back to you.
I believe and I support with everything you just said. I think it's a very challenging on both ends when there's one-sidedness, and it's truly about what is required and what's better, that both can come together and really mold and shape. One of the things that that's out there is on the one-sidedness, people that aren't ready for marriage and pursue it, and it feels that once they've gotten into the shell of the marriage, then a lot is now exposed in who they really are. And a lot of that one-sidedness comes out, or there's not enough of the commitment to bring everything together. It can be very hard if we don't acknowledge where we are even before we get to that point. Because a lot of the times, and this is my personal opinion, that there are normally lights, signals of what these persons are even before the journey of a committed relationship begins. And we have to be very keen to those lights, those cautions of what's there that makes us or gives us an indication that something needs to be addressed, something needs to be talked about. There's a conversation that must be had, because again, some of this comes in because, as you said, you mentioned earlier, you spoke about communication. It follows into the relationship if it's not talked about, if it's not addressed, or some clarity comes into it. Because when that doesn't happen, you've already started or have a relationship right now that really takes a lot more to really understand what each other is really coming together. And this is what I'm trying to say. It takes an enormous amount of openness before a committed relationship embarks on a journey. And when I talk about openness, I'm talking about there's no hidden agendas. It's this, and it's this. And when you have individuals that say, well, I hear you, but this is what I want, or this is what I'm focusing on, or this is how I need to be, whatever. Those are indications that there needs to be a deeper conversation or a deeper way of addressing a lot of things that come out of those types of conversations. Not saying that there's a lot of motives, but what I'm saying is that those doors, those trap doors, come into being reality if they're not questioned or clarity is brought into it. And it can hinder.